Hey, hey, hey. Here we go. The time is coming. Hey guys, hey guys, hey guys. It is Jim with Crawfordology, and I am so glad that you are with us today. You know, I forget how to work these things, by the way. It's been so long. If you haven't done it already, please make sure you like and subscribe. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, all the different outlets out there. So glad that you guys could join us tonight. We're going to talk about Afghanistan. I think it's on everyone's mind. And we have a special guest going to join us here shortly. And I will tell you a little bit about him. But before we do that, let's jump over. And by the way, you are not going to want to miss our guest tonight. So let me tell you a little bit about him now. Lieutenant Colonel Perry Blackburn, he was one of the first Special Forces operators in country in Afghanistan. You're gonna want to hear what he says. He's doing a lot right now, as are many other folks in special operations and around the country, veterans who are working to save the lives of the people who they've come to know and love and trust, and they are working diligently around this time, the self-imposed deadline. Anyway, hey, look, we'll be back to that. If you haven't, please make sure you go visit us over at AmericanOne. Look, Facebook does stuff weird. Right? There's just nothing else to say about it. But Facebook does some stuff. They control our reach. And I've shared this with you guys. You guys have seen it, right? So they actually contract. They hold us back. They say you can't do this. You can't talk about these things. So what do? They suppress our ability to connect with you. If you come over to AmericanOne, they can't do that. So AmericanOne is our own spot. You can see the live stream will actually show up here. Come on. The live stream will show up here on AmericanOne, and we have a chat right here. So you can join in and chat there as well. So don't feel like Facebook's the only way to catch up with us. So jump in here, find us wherever we are, make sure you interact with us. Listen, I want to start out today with something that is a little different than usual, but I want to share this with you. My job
there was as a foreign military sales officer, so I was on the front lines of
you guys hear this okay?
Equipment that the Americans provided and turned over to the Afghan army and the Afghan police. I'm going to read to you what is so painful for me and so many other Afghan veterans who served in that capacity and others who served as a part of the train, advise, and assist equip effort in helping the Afghans. We now know that due to the negligence of this administration, the Taliban now has access to over $85 billion worth of American military equipment. That includes 75,000 vehicles, over 200 airplanes and helicopters, over 600,000
so you guys
small
can't
arms
hear this?
and light weapons. The Taliban now has more Black Hawk helicopters than 85% of the countries in the world. But they don't just have weapons. They also have night vision goggles, body armor, medical supplies, and unfathomable to me and so many others is that the Taliban now has biometric devices, which have the fingerprints, eye scans, and the biographical information of the Afghans who helped us over the last 20 years. And here's what we just learned again in the briefing that we just walked out of, is this administration still has no plan to get this military equipment or these supplies back.
So guys, that was actual members of the acquisition community, and let's just say some leaders in the country very concerned about the amount of gear and equipment that have now been handed over to the Taliban, to folks who are our foes. We know that, right? We know that. So how do we explain that away? How do we make it work with other folks who we hold highly accountable for this type of gear? So I'm going to, and in the interest of time, folks, it is 7:11 here on East Coast time. I'm bringing in Mr. Perry Blackburn, Lieutenant Colonel retired. So Perry, I got you on here. Give me just a second. I see you in you're kind of half upside down at the moment. Can you hear me okay, Perry? We're going to see how well we can do these things. So hang in there, folks. There we go. Perry, can you hear me? Perry, can you hear me okay? Are you able to hear me, Perry? Okay, folks, so we're having a little trouble with audio here with Perry. Give us just a second. We're going to get this sorted out. So kind of continuing on, Perry, let me know when you have us. Continuing on with this, though, thousands of pieces of gear and equipment now in the hands of the Afghans. Now, not just in the hands of the Afghans, but in the hands of our sworn enemies, in the hands of the Taliban. So how can we actually make this understandable for the veterans, for the thousands, tens of thousands of veterans who fought and bled in Afghanistan for their freedom and to protect American ideas? If you go back 20 years, now I know this is hard, but we are coming up to the 20-year anniversary. So one reason this makes it really nice to have Perry in today is Perry was one of the first guys there. So Perry remembers the original mission, right? He knows what he was told to do, and he's going to have some insight here to share with us. So let's see if we've got audio. Perry, can you hear me? Oh, Perry has, I've lost Perry. So, okay, while we get this worked out, listen, I want to make sure that you're all tracking, and this is where I could really use Simon today. I'm broadcasting from home, so you guys will have to hang in here with us. Perry, are you able to hear us? It looks like Perry may be having some technical difficulties, which is probably us. It's probably on my side, not on Perry's side. I'm going to see if I can do a couple of things. And folks, you're seeing how the sausage gets made right now, right? That's one of the lovely things about podcast. Perry, are you able to hear us? Can you hear? No sound. Okay, so we're going to have to come back to Perry with a. Let's see if I can figure out another way here, because gosh, you guys don't want to miss this. I want to share with you so that you can see we have Perry here ready to go. Having a little bit of difficulty getting Perry onto the screen. Okay. So let's see if we can do this another way. I'm gonna call Perry on his phone, and we'll work it that way. I appreciate you folks hanging in there with us. You know, these are the things that happen, right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, I got Perry on the phone, folks. So we're gonna get him. We're gonna get him on the screen and bring him in here. All right. All right. There we go. Oh, I got you sideways there, Perry. All right. There we go. So we'll try this, folks. Again, let me introduce retired Lieutenant Colonel Perry Blackburn. He was one of the early guys, one of the first guys from 5th Group Special Forces on the ground in Afghanistan, going back 20 years. A lot of interesting things have happened. But Perry, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for taking the time to have me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, Perry, I'm just going to ping my audience here as we go and make sure they can hear you. So if you guys will give me a thumbs up and let me know that that you can hear Perry when he's talking, that would be helpful. So Perry, let's jump right into this, and I'll talk across you if they can't hear you. Tell me a little bit. It's 20 years ago. You're headed into Afghanistan. What was the mission?
The mission was to go in and defeat Al Qaeda and the Taliban. Our mission wasn't in particular to get Bin Laden, but if that was part of it, well, that would so be it. That would be the better part of it, right? Because that's what everybody was angry about. But really, we went in to defeat Al Qaeda and the Taliban and restore government in Afghanistan, like we did do. I mean, I think we forget how successful we were in the early days and how quickly we were able to do that and sustain it.
Yeah, so Perry, interestingly, we go in because Afghanistan is a hotbed for folks to do whatever they want and deliver whatever their brand of terrorism is to the world, right? And as you say, Bin Laden's there, but the Taliban's just indifferent to it. They don't really care what happens within their borders when it comes to American citizens or our NATO allies abroad. It's just a fact of life, right?
Right, absolutely. And it's a horrible regime that treats its people horribly. There's no liberty in that country. No freedom never has been. It's been a conquering warring country probably since its inception, right? And so we knew what we were getting into, but if we remember back, a lot of folks had doubt because of what happened with the Russians. And then here we were, this small group of people in 5th Special Forces Group, just wreaking havoc all over the country and defeating the Taliban. And it didn't take long, but it took a lot longer to reestablish some level of order within the country. And like if you look at what we're dealing with now, we kind of forget what the attitude was when they voted for the first time. Do you remember I remember distinctly that woman with her finger blotted with ink, holding it up. We voted, we did this. We're just like you. We're like America. We're bringing what you showed us, what you gave us, what you promised, and we're trying the best we can to move forward. And we sold them on that, and they bought it, right? They bought it so much that going back from the early days, our interpreters are starting to dress like us, act like us. They're starting to dip Copenhagen, I mean, they're just all in about America. And truly in the last 18 months, I think, we haven't had any servicemen killed in combat in Afghanistan. So we had it rooted. What we didn't have was a long-term patience to allow that to continue. And it needed to be a generational change. I think you and I were talking about this earlier, and we needed the old Taliban to die out. and the new people to come in and just grasp this whole ideal of freedom and liberty and let it take root. And it started to. I mean, they were educating women. Just unbelievable things that they were doing in such a short time.
So things that hadn't happened in 2,000 years in Afghanistan, hadn't been even dreamt of. Not only were we educating women, but we have women up until 3 weeks ago that were mayors in towns that were actually calling the shots. And you want to talk about a huge advancement for something that Democrats seem to usually beckon to, which is the idea of advancing not just multicultural ideas, but certainly parity amongst the sexes and women's lib, if you will. And here it's really happening in real time. And suddenly there is an institutional change, a decision that despite some of the key leaders, we're not leaving troops in, we're not leaving any sort of stability or security force. I think that's even in contrary to NATO, as I understand it. NATO had no idea or understanding that this was going to be our policy, and here we are with what's going on today in Afghanistan.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And you bring up the politicians, and it hurts. It hurts the fellas. I mean, a lot of people have reached out to me. We've had a lot of deep conversations. We're knee deep into trying to save every single Afghani American citizen that has reached out to us for help. And we're doing this right now, real time. I'm looking at my phone and there's messages coming across as we're having this discussion. And it's kind of taking my attention away a little bit because it's so disruptive what's going on down there real time. It's completely different from what we're hearing from our own people in our own government. The whole idea of an American citizen being able to walk up to the commercial airline with his passport and get on a plane is absolute fabrication of the truth. Absolutely. That is not happening on the ground. It never has been since they started retreating. And they came into, and we now established a defensive line, and the Taliban is right in the line. There's no way that those folks can be able to do that. And that's how this movement, I haven't really talked about this movement to your audience, but with you, I mean, this movement has taken place from these conversations with each other about what are we going to do about this? Because we spent our life there. I spent my youth. My youth was spent in war for this country. And I too bought into the fact that we're going to liberate the oppressed. The oppresso liber. Liberate the oppressed and let them have an opportunity to live free without the fear of a Taliban regime. A horrible regime that we all of a sudden, we forgot that 20 years ago they were cutting people's heads off. And that now we're negotiating with them, and they're telling us what to do, what we can and cannot do on the ground. So we said, okay, we'll do you one better, USG. We'll do you one better, Taliban. We're going to do everything we can to get people inside there and get them on a plane and go. Because we believe not one left behind, not one. And it's not about politics to us. I don't really care. It's just, you're a leader. You should lead from the front. You should never allow our U.S. citizens to be placed in a position where they're stranded. I know they don't like that term, but there's no other way to call it than being stranded when you leave them. And if you don't think that they bought into it, think back about those folks that held onto that airplane when it was leaving.
Perry, I want to catch you on a couple of these things because let me, for the audience once more, And Perry, thanks again for taking time out. Perry is literally working round the clock right now with many other soft brothers and sisters to get and other veterans and civilians. Folks, I mean, this movement has become a real American values type movement where we say, look, there might be people who don't care and they don't really mind keeping their word, and they don't care about the people that they partner with and the things they promise. But we as Americans, there's a bigger group here that can work despite our leadership in Washington and despite the folks who are allowing this to happen from various government agencies. So Perry, you are part of, and the specific name, I don't know the name of yours. We've talked about so many. There's Yellow Umbrella, there's Pineapple Brigade, there's Digital Dunkirk, all of these things referencing, groups of people who've come together using social media, email, telephones, contacts on the ground to get people out of Afghanistan as we race towards this self-imposed August 31st deadline. Now, Perry, here's my first question. We all watched the president just a couple of days ago, and the president said, hey, we're not going to get all the American citizens out because there are many American citizens who don't want to come. They want to stay in Afghanistan because they have dual passports and they want to stay there. Now, Perry, how many of those folks are you running into, that they're saying, well, I want my sister out, but I'm going to stay because I really want to stay in Afghanistan?
None. Okay, first of all, zero. There's zero people that want to stay there. And it's the example of that, again, goes back to them holding on to an airplane to leave. Never been on an airplane in their life, and they're holding on to the outside of it. So you get no more greater example of countering that message than that visual right there. But for us, there are definitely people that want to bring their families with them. Yeah. And they're American citizens, and their families may not be yet. Like their children may not have their citizenship papers yet. He does, his wife does, but their children doesn't. So we expect him to leave his children behind? No, no man would do that in his right mind. So certainly they're not going to do it. So that narrative is, again, a fabrication of the truth. They want to get out, but you can't leave behind a family member who, by the way, so far has a visa to get in. But we've decided the cut is AMCITs, American citizens, and then that's it. Well, we can't leave. You can't, in his right mind, leave those folks behind. We've got people. Now, I want you all to listen to this for a second, because when I found this out, I couldn't believe it. It hurt to the core. We've got people in the Special Forces Corps that are Afghanis that are American citizens. Their wife is left behind in Afghanistan. It's children in Afghanistan, and they cannot get out. We were pushing, leveraging every single contact we have for these folks to get their families out. So to have these arbitrary priorities and then just say, well, if you want to get out, you can get out, is absolutely false narrative. Not happening. They want to get out, but we won't let them out. They want to get out, and we can't get them through the gate. And this whole movement started with watching this go down really rapidly. And we started talking with each other. We started hearing from our interpreters that we used to work with who couldn't get through a gate. It's as simple as that. This problem set is as simple as getting through a gate, and it has caused the death of 13 of our best. 13 of our best died because of a gate, our tactical presence on a gate. Because we won't let people in that need to leave. because we already have their process sieve, the special immigration visas, but they can't get in, and they're at the gate asking to get in. They want to get in so they can get on that plane and come to America. And not all of them are coming to America either. So it's not like they're taking anybody's place that's coming up from the South. A lot of these folks are going to different countries. They're sitting in Doha. Right. So that is absolutely false.
So Perry, there are thousands of people. I mean, last estimates that we heard were from if you were listening to the White House last week, it was maybe 1,500. I think was the number that they threw out that might stay. I know we've had some conversations about this, and it's tens of thousands, because we're talking about not just the people in Kandahar, but the people who are spread out around the rest of the country. By the way, even U.S. citizens, government contractors who were out working in other places and did not anticipate the collapse happening so quickly. We've got some other folks, and you and I haven't talked about this, Perry, that were working with the Afghan sniper program, and one of them just happened to rotate back, and his guys were trying to figure out how to get back inside the wire to get out of country. So it's not just the people that we're talking about that we're seeing on the news in Kandahar. It's people that are spread. This is a country, right? This is a country that's tribal. People want to live near their families. They want to live. They have roots. This is civilization for us a couple of hundred years ago, when families were the center of the universe. You didn't pack up and move to Phoenix if you were raised in Virginia. You stayed in Virginia. You died in Virginia. And these folks who are going through a tremendous upheaval, certainly at the end of 20 years. Not saying there haven't been problems, Perry, but have you seen any place around the world where we've been able to have institutional change that swept across all levels of people within a single generation?
No.
I couldn't think of it myself.
I can't think of one. Now that you asked me that question, everything that we've done, we've been, we're in South Korea, generations in South Korea still there, Germany's still there, Japan's still there, throughout Europe still there. So no, and to make the change that we made in that country. So let's think about riding horseback to engage the enemy, to now these guys are driving around with our equipment in 20 years, and in the development of the education system. And people are like, wow, what does it matter about education? Well, it matters in that it brings them to another level of consciousness about how to be better than what they were before, how to improve their infrastructure, what they becoming engineers and going back and being part of that rebuild of Afghanistan, which we preach as a country, right? That's what we wanted them to do. So they did it. They bought into it. The women's movement. I love you using this because I haven't heard a word from AOC since this thing started, or Pelosi, or any of those other females that continue to preach about women's being treated poorly. And here we are, where a country within 20 years, and just like you said, brother, just like you said, they're in leadership positions. They're there as engineers. They've taken the burqa off. That's significant. It's significant because it shows freedom. You want to wear a hijab, wear a hijab. You want to wear a burqa, wear a burqa. That's up to you. But they decided, hey, I don't want to wear one. I want to be different. I want to be educated. I want to do these things. Falala, we forgot all about her. Holy mackerel. Wonder what she's thinking now. She took her round to the face.
Yeah.
And then we promoted her. The United States of America promoted her as a great example of a female that stood strong. And then we did this to them. We allowed this to happen. I nobody can, none of my brothers can explain why we let this happen. We really can't. We have no idea why we would let such an epic failure on our government's part to take place in a country that we had success in, huge success. We can argue whether or not we should leave, but nobody is arguing right now about how this went down.
So you know, when people look at, and I hear a lot of criticism, you know, in the past we looked at Africa consistently here in the U.S. as a project too big for us, right? We couldn't fix the wrongs in Africa. But I look at Afghanistan and I think about $2 trillion invested of treasure, not to mention the changed lives of America's best, our war fighters who made the ultimate sacrifice, as well as those war fighters that are coming back with PTSD, that are touched for the rest of their lives with both the memory of the war itself and then the extraction. And not to draw too many parallels to Vietnam, but I think of this and I think, you know, our leadership has to be held accountable to the point that if we determine that it's in our best interest to go into a country to create upheaval for people far away, and that there is some tactical advantage to that, we have got to have leaders that have a strong determination and an outcome that's decided and bilaterally agreed upon. We can't have these swings that become so political, so left and right, you know, so Democrat, Republican. We're dealing with people's lives, and we're dealing with, as you say, you know, your youth spent fighting a war in a distant land just to see our country decide, maybe it's not that important.
You know, what's interesting about this movement that is taking place is these networks that we've developed. And when I say we, I mean we. It's a beautiful thing to watch. In spite of our government, in spite of the State Department, in spite of the Taliban, in spite of everybody else, we've created these networks. And they're not political. There's liberals in there, Democrats, Republicans. It doesn't matter. They're not political. We don't care about your wokeness. Ain't got time for it. We don't care about anything other than the purpose of getting folks out of Afghanistan. And they're all in on that. Women, men, military, non-military. One of the best people we have in our groups is a nurse. And that's why we named the Momo Railroad, because she's working so hard to get people out of Afghanistan. The Yellow Umbrella Brigade, there's a reason behind that, because we use that as a success story to get people inside of the gate to get on a plane. The same reason the Pineapple Express. You know, these people are coming up with these ingenious ways to solve this problem, and they're not they're not political about it, but it's in spite of our politicians. And our politicians really should be ashamed of themselves. I'll be honest with you, and our military leadership. I hate to say it, but you can't sit back and say you didn't fail. If I would have, as a commander on the ground, if I would have conducted an operation, planned and executed an operation that failed at this level, I would have been fired. They would have fired me. They would probably put me in Leavenworth, right? And here's a great example of it. This Marine Lieutenant Colonel comes out and he speaks the truth, and they fired him. But yet our leadership is going to stand up and tell us everything's okay in Afghanistan. We've got this handled. You don't. 13 of our greatest and best and brightest people doing the Lord's work in an untenable position have died over there for no reason at all. We haven't had a single soldier or airman, sailor, Marine die in 18 months until we retreated.
Well, Perry, let's see. Do you have, I know I'm past my time. Do you have a couple more minutes that I can see if I've got some questions here from the audience?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think this message needs to get out, and I think you probably have a really sophisticated audience. And so, yeah, absolutely. Time for anything.
We've got a great American audience, Perry. I tell you that. So one thing I'd just like to put out to all the folks over here at Crawfordology and at AmericanOne, you know, in the comments, if you will give me your questions, I'm going to pick a few questions to ask Perry before he jumps back onto the Momo Railroad and getting folks back into safety from, you know, the clutches of Taliban. And you know, if you haven't done it already, while you guys are here, just hit the share button so that we get this out to the largest number of folks. And while I'm waiting on those questions to come in, you know, your point about Lieutenant Colonel Scheller over at the Marine Corps, relieved of duty, and you know, just since you and I have been on the phone today, I don't know if you saw this or not, he actually resigned his commission.
That's huge.
So 17-year veteran, 3 years from retirement, 100% disability, and he said thanks, but no thanks. I'm not taking any of that. I love the Marine Corps. I have an issue, and it hasn't been answered. So he's stepped down. Okay,
so somehow or another, Comrade Vindman went to the War College.
Right.
I mean, the hypocrisy is unbelievable right now, and this is not how we fight America's wars. It's just not.
So Perry, several of the folks are asking, hey, how can we help? Is there a website they can go to? Is there any way they can offer up resources, money? What do you need?
So yeah, we do need money. I have a nonprofit that we're using. It's called AFG Free. If you want to donate to that, fine. I don't care if it's 50 cents or $1. It doesn't matter. It's all going to help extract our American citizens from Afghanistan. I put my own money in it. I'm using my own money. We all are using our own money. This thing is going so fast that the support mechanisms are catching up to us. So that's one way. The second thing is, if you by social media or however are in touch with someone down in Afghanistan, look me up. I'm easy guy to find. The Taliban have my number, so if I answer their number, I'm going to answer yours, right? So 913-775-3987 is my number, and I will help you the best I can. I know people are like, man, why do you keep giving out your money, your number? Because I don't care. I want to help. I will help you help them all day long, and that's what this movement's about. My number is all over social media anyway, so that's another thing. If you have contact with them, let me know. Reach out to me. I answer my phone every time it rings, or I call back every time. Plus, I'm on social media, and you can hit me up on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. But that's how we can help right now. The other thing is, and this kind of interesting movement, because you always hear, write a letter to your congressman. I'm like, oh, hell no, I ain't got time for that. And we didn't, so we started calling them. And we started badgering them. It wasn't just a phone call and the gatekeeper wouldn't let us talk to somebody. We started badgering, and we started getting to our Congress and senators. And you can hear they're speaking what we're saying. You do the same now. So it's don't need to write them, call them, tell them. It is unacceptable for us to leave one behind. Not one will be left behind. Keep pushing the administration. We have the strength. This is America.
Amen. Amen to that. Now, Perry, how do they contribute to AFG3? Is there a website?
It's AFG Free, FREE. It's a website. It's PayPal right now. I'm sure it's going to develop into something different, and I will get you.
Yeah, send it to me.
Anything else? Yeah, you can give it to the folks. Like I said, we're so far out in front of this, but the money we're getting is going right out. The banking, you got to understand, the economy is broke in Afghanistan right now. So these folks that were making money and putting, as we taught them to do, put your money in the bank, now have zero access to it, and we're trying to move them around the battlefield to get out. So it's kind of difficult. But we figured out some ways to get money to them, and we're doing it, and they're getting it, and it's helping get them into their next point of departure, arrival, which would be either in Europe, Doha, and then maybe finally here in the States. I think there was a plane load that came into Houston not too long ago.
Yeah, and here in Virginia, you know, we've got two bases: Fort Lee, Virginia, just south of Richmond, and then out in Blackstone, what used to be a regular Army base, Fort Pickett, are both receiving Afghans. However, I'll say, just to kind of tag on to what you're talking about there, you know, some of these folks are looking at 18 months before they can make it into the U.S. Those Civ folks going through the Civ process, they're a lower priority. They're going to, the ones who are lucky are it's not unlikely that they'll go to a third country first, where they'll have to pay for their normal life. They'll have to support themselves without having the benefit of working papers in those countries. So your financial help will definitely be helpful for these folks. Of course, as always, you know, here at Crawfordology, AmericanOne, we're not taking any of it. We're just directing you guys straight to the places where you can make donations, and we want you to do that, you know, as much as you can. Another thing that that may come out, and it's been asked, at least on a couple of other folks, I've heard this. If you've got an extra house, an apartment, a room, a place where in the future you may have room for an Afghan family, and you're willing to do it, you know, another way of giving back is to help these folks here. It doesn't have to be a long term. They don't have to live with you for 5 years, but you know, helping them get stabilized. Imagine we had one family, Perry, that you and I talked about the other day, a husband, a wife, and their 5 children. Actually, 7 children. Yeah, and all those children very young. So imagine, put yourself in their place. You're trying to come to America. You're trying to get away from harm, and you need people who just care about people. So always those things are helpful.
You know what? That's a great point. I know there's more questions, but real quick, just think about this for a second. America abandoned them. We stranded them. Yet they're still reaching out to us for help. I mean, I don't want to be overly dramatic about it, but that's insane to think. That's the relationships we built with them. That they know, okay, you guys abandon us as a government, but I know if I reach out to Perry, he won't abandon me. He will do everything he can to help me. And that's what America's about. That's what we're about. We've always been about that. That whole idea that you just spoke to about helping folks when they get here, that's an easy fix, because you know what? People will do it. Americans will do that easily, because that's how we are. We are definitely not what we see on TV today. Not at all. Not the people I know. Not even the people I argue with are like this.
Yeah. Amen. So Perry, I'm going to give you a last question here, and I think you've touched on it, but several folks are saying, "Hey, how do we expose?" And I want to be careful here, because knowing, you know, Perry's a retired lieutenant colonel from SF, so he's got things he has to also be careful of. But he's a truth giver, so I appreciate that about you, Perry. How do we hold the leadership accountable, you know, for these types of decisions?
Yeah, and that's actually a great question, because the generals of our military have circled the wagons. I've spent my youth fighting for these guys. And when I reach out to them, they can't help. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? Of course you can. All I need is a contact here or contact there. That's why you got to this point in life, right? You got the 4 stars on your collar or whatever it is. You have that access. What we're missing in the narrative is what I told Shannon Bream on Fox News, who, by the way, is a wonderful person, great American. And she's just, she's not all conservative. She's not all liberal. It doesn't matter. But she's an American. She's all in about what we're doing and trying to help everybody out. And I appreciated her letting me get on Fox News and telling the story. But I need to get, the narrative, the truth needs to get to the other side, to the CNN side, to the NBC, CNBC, the people that are drinking the Kool-Aid. They've got to hear the truth. So, circling back to the answer is, our elected officials that you see right now that are silent are the ones that you have to call. You got to harass them a little bit. And by harassing, I mean, we're not, we're not rude people, but you can't accept no for an answer. You got to push until you talk to someone of authority within that congressional apparatus that they have going. The secretary or the poor lady answering the phone or the poor guy answering the phone, they're just going to take a message. But all of you, no matter if you served or not, you're an American. You have the right given to you by God, not man, but by God, to affect change. And you got to believe that. That's the people we need to get a hold of. They're humans. Eventually, it is my belief they will see the total catastrophic failure in what we're doing, the continuing reinforcing the failure, and that should push different decisions within our government. The other thing is, y'all might as well run for office and change this stuff too. I don't know why we keep voting in folks like this. This is nuts. I'd rather vote for somebody that's down there, a working man, that's decided to run for office and affect change. And I know that sounds crazy, right? It does. It sounds, but that's the people we need in office. We don't need people that all of a sudden were making $30,000 a year and now they're multimillionaires. There's something wrong with that. Yeah. We need good folks, and you folks can do that. I believe that's how we affect change.
Yeah, amen to that. And look, Perry's going to be back with us because we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of 5th Special Forces Group putting feet down in Afghanistan right after the attack on the Twin Towers. It was our first strike back at the apparatus that caused us the harm on September 11th. I can't thank you enough, Perry, both for your service, for your heart, for your time, and I'll tell you, I've seen Perry. I've had occasion to see Perry in action with some Afghans, working with us, and really a one of a kind, a prince of a guy. Perry, thanks so much for joining us. And I lost your video, but we will.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm literally getting a call from Afghanistan, but I'll call him right back.
Hey, go.
Thank you, brother. I love you guys, man. I love what you're doing. Keep the word out. I love the questions. It just shows that you got a great audience there, and I appreciate them taking the time out and listening to us tonight. And I just love you, brother. I love you for everything you're doing for God and country and trying to move us in the right direction. So thank you for having me.
All right, man. You hang in there. We'll see you soon.
All right, brother.
All right. Take care. That's Perry Blackburn, folks. And again, Perry is a real American, one of those guys that you look at and you say, we don't often find people who are willing to stand up and talk as Perry was this evening. He was very transparent with us. He shared a lot. We heard a lot of a lot of insights from him. So I want to come back and hear from you again. You know, it's been a while since we've been able to be together, but I want to hear what you're thinking. I want to see your questions and see how else we might communicate here. There are, by the way, and we talked about it, a number of folks. These guys are just indefatigable when it comes to being interested in hearing what the government says versus what they know needs to happen. These are folks with feet on the ground who've been in Afghanistan multiple times. They've made connections. They've got friends, and they're saying enough is enough. You guys are showing extreme either incompetence or extreme just big don't give a care buttons, right? You just don't seem to care about these folks. The way this withdrawal has been conducted, I'm not gonna go into the criticisms of why it happened this way. All I'm saying is the outcome. I'm not satisfied with the outcome. I know many of you are not satisfied with the outcome, and it's going to take us, just as Perry said, pinging your elected officials, telling them that you expect that they do better. They're not properly representing us in foreign policy or on the foreign stage. This isn't how you create long-term relationships. Who wants to partner with us next? Who wants to partner? Can you imagine how do the Taiwanese feel when they see what we've just done in Afghanistan? You know, how does the next corner of the world that's going through upheaval, how do they feel when they see what's going on in Afghanistan and when they see how the U.S. pulls out? You know, Vietnam was an ugly mark, right? And my father's a Vietnam veteran, so I have tons and tons of respect for those folks who served in either Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. You all know I'm a veteran. I mean, it's something that I care about deeply. So, but we've got to have a system where people can look to us as Americans and say, hey, those guys mean what they say. When they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. So we can't be put off by people who set about, our enemies, who set about giving a narrative that causes us to create new rules. You know, the rules of engagement. We heard those issues midway through the war. And it's not until you get serious and realize that war is an ugly thing and you're going to have to press it hard to win. By the way, look at how many, I want to go way back in time just to give you a quick parallel. So here we are in the Civil War, the American Civil War. The Peninsula Campaign has begun. And if you know Virginia, you can kind of picture this peninsula. In fact, I live on the peninsula. And the Union forces are moving up the peninsula to Richmond, but it's taking forever. Lincoln fires general after general saying these guys can't get it done. And it's not until he brings in Grant who's got an attitude about it. He's got an intent. He says, we're going to go to Richmond. We're going to win the war. But it takes that sort of fortitude to win a war. And that means Grant was criticized in his day for the casualties. He was criticized for not caring about people and collateral damage. I mean, we all know what happened with Sherman as he marched to the sea and burned half the countryside. His idea was, hey, you're not going to live off this land. War is an ugly thing. What is worse than war is the idea that we're going to war, but not really. A half-hearted attempt at changing something and then pulling out after 20 years. Perry talked about it. We've been in Japan. We've been in Germany for 80 years. 80 years to assure consistent and steady growth and prosperity in those countries, safety. Up until a few years ago, Japan wasn't even allowed by their own constitution to have a military. So let's look at these things logically. You're not going to a country that's been backwards in terms of development or suppressed in terms of development by 2,000 years, still living tribally, with tribes that don't care for one another, and suddenly going to say, well, I think 20 years was time enough. We should be able to do that. We had 2,500 troops in, and we were able to get some steady state. Yes, part of that was probably because we were negotiating the withdrawal. Part of that was also that we had the force there to do something about it. So, folks, my silver lining is that you are the change. You are the change. You make the difference. You go and you, right when we finish, do a Google search, call your senators, call your representatives, and let them know how you feel. Let them come in tomorrow with 40 messages from Crawfordologists who are saying, hey, BS. I don't care about that deadline. We don't listen to the Taliban. The Taliban doesn't tell us when we leave. We say when we're ready to go. And most of all, we don't want them to leave without bringing every single American back, every single American's family, every single Afghani who supported us during the war, who fought alongside us, who bled alongside us. And now to just turn them over to the other side, I can't see it, folks. That's not American. That's not American values. That's not doing what we say. That's not living our code. So please, after this, jump right off and make those phone calls. Be the difference. You are the silver lining. Guys, gals, I can't say thank you enough. I appreciate you all coming. We're going to have many more folks like Perry, although Perry's one of those guys often imitated, never duplicated. He does have some great stories about, if you saw those horse soldiers, in the movie 12, that's Perry's people. So I want you guys to see this, and I want you to watch it. And we're going to have Perry back before September 11th. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a great night.